You're not gonna get burnt out from the desire or the dream of becoming famous, but you're gonna get burnt out from the protocols and the systems and the things that you're doing to get there. Skip quick fixes. This is gonna take time. It's about who you become through the process. It's about learning to appreciate every single step of the process. When curveballs get thrown at you, which they inevitably will do, learn to pivot, not to quit, because quitting should never be an option. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 1 in a Million podcast. Hello, my beauties. Today we're going to be talking about how do you guarantee without a single doubt that you're not going to burn out when it comes to your fitness goals this year. Now, let me tell you, burning out is one of the things that happens with high achievers very often. I've never met someone who is a bum, a low achiever, not really wanting more out of life, and has found that they're reaching burnout, or they get into the point where they're like, oh, I just can't do this anymore, because they're not the go-getters, right? So someone who's like farting around through life, they're never gonna feel like they're absolutely exhausted because they've been desperately chasing a certain goal. So if you're listening to this, kudos to you, my friend, because you're a hard worker and you want to get more out of life. However, that also puts you in the risk category, in the risk of burning out, because you won't be feeling too good if you're pushing too hard, too soon, too fast, or getting just knocked left, right, and center because of life's curveballs, which will inevitably happen. So what we're going to talk about is how, if you feel like you might be looking up at the Mount Everest, that is your fitness journey, and you want to get to that pinnacle and you kind of wish you were there yesterday, we're going to talk about what you need to do to guarantee that you're not getting completely exasperated to the point where you just give up. And I was recently speaking to a client about this that said, I'm just feeling like I'm a bit demotivated, derailed from my fat loss goals. I'm feeling just exasperated. And this woman is such a hard worker, amazing career in the finance industry, has such an abundant, beautiful life when it comes to her friendships, family, relationships. Like, she is spinning so many plates at once. So no wonder she got to this point where she was trying really hard and doing a lot, probably more than what was needed to get to where she wanted to be. But it was also the lens through which she was seeing fat loss or her fitness journey. Because I promise you, you're not going to get burnt out from the goal. Like, if we were to phrase it as, I want to become famous, right? You're not going to get burnt out from the desire or the dream of becoming famous. But you're going to get burnt out from the protocols and the systems and the things that you're doing to get there. However, a lot of people can then be like, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe I can't do it. No, the dream is still there. It's not that you're tired of the dream of where you want to get to. It's the fact that what you're doing in the pursuit of achieving that dream is wrong. Or your mindset is wrong, because maybe what you're doing is right, but you haven't framed your mindset correctly. Maybe you're in a little bit of a pessimist mindset, and we need to kind of shake that out of you to get you feeling a whole lot more motivated and excited. Recently, I read a book which is called The Courage to be Disliked. Now, there was a very important passage which, if you listen to the end of this episode, you will understand through and through, because this passage alluded to, if life's mission was to get to a point as soon as possible and to have it over and done with, then we would all be miserable. Because let's say you wanted to climb Mount Everest and your job was to get to Mount Everest as quickly as possible and then to come straight back down. Who do you become in that process? Versus, who do you become in the process of not doing it in the most efficient way, but doing it in the way which builds your character the most? Hear me out. You might really, really want a result, right? Maybe, let's talk about, maybe there's someone that you have a bit of a crush on. Maybe there's someone that you like. Maybe you think, I really want to be with that person. Like, I admire them, I idolize them, like, I think that they would make my life amazing. Okay, so if I could snap my fingers and you're suddenly married to this person, who have you become in the process of just imminently getting what you want Versus, let's say if in order to be married to this person or to get this person, you had to become more emotionally intelligent. You had to learn how to communicate better as a partner. You had to maybe progress a little bit in your career to be respected enough by that person because they're someone who has a whole lot of achievement, and maybe the circles that person hangs around in is totally different to you. So who would you become if you didn't do it the most efficient way and just get what you wanted? You went the long way round and you got the most experience, the most seasoning, the most flavor in that journey. So one of them, you basically don't have to sacrifice time and effort. But on the other path, you do sacrifice time and effort. However, in the process, you learn so much about yourself. You become a completely different person because getting what you want 9 times out of 10 is not what matters. It's who you become in the process of getting of what you want. Because let's say right now you want to be a millionaire. I gave you 10 million pounds or dollars or euros to wherever the hell you are in the world listening to this. I give you 10 million. Okay. Are you going to be able to maintain the lifestyle that you want, or to build on the lifestyle that you want, to become incredibly wealthy and to maintain that generational wealth? Well, probably not, because why not? You don't know how to handle that much money. You've never made that much money. How are you going to maintain it? How are you going to sustain it? How are you going to use it? Versus someone who had to grind their arse off for 10, 20 years to earn their first million. They're going to know the value of that money and how to use that money to create more generational wealth, so much more. So this is the point that I'm getting across. It is not the end goal that matters. It's who the hell you become in the process and what you learn. Because if I just gave you the thing that you wanted in this instance, you probably wouldn't be able to maintain it and keep it because you don't know what's required to do it or to manage it. So my point is, in order to not burn out, you need to realize that it's not just about getting to the pinnacle of Mount Everest. It is about who you become during that climb. It is about every single lesson that you learn on this fitness journey. How do you need to change your habits? How do you need to change the way that you speak to yourself? How do you need to change your routine? How do you need to change the relationships so that they actually support your goals? It is who you become in this process that matters. So if you want to guarantee that you get to that fitness goal that you have for yourself this year, I am telling you now, you must listen to this episode with the appreciation that the process and what the process teaches you is ultimately the most important thing that will happen in this domain of your life of health and fitness. So starting with point number 1, you need to guarantee that you completely eliminate the thought of any quick fixes in your mindset. If you even for a second are considering fat burning pills or all the different injections or crashing and slashing your calories, let me tell you right now, immediately you are doing something that is unsustainable. How weird, right? That just because there is something that could speed you up to getting to where you want to be, you're going to take that route. But then what happens when you're on the other side of it? Let's say these fat loss injections. Are you going to take fat loss injections for your whole life? Or fat loss medication for your whole life? Probably not. Is it something that can be used in certain cases, don't get it twisted here, to kickstart someone who might have a greater medical need to begin weight loss? Let's say we're even talking about surgery, such as a gastric bypass, etc. That's a completely different situation. To someone that has already been diagnosed with a particular health condition, that leaves them at an adverse advantage. But I want to just speak to the 99% of people that are listening to this podcast that do not have significant health conditions that impact them from losing body fat. And if you are in that small camp, then you know what you need to do? You should probably go to a specialist that knows inside out about your health condition and what is going to help you. AKA, if you have PCOS and you want to lose body fat, but you know that you having PCOS is impacting your ability to lose body fat, then you go and speak to a PCOS fat loss expert, such as me. I'm able to support you when it comes to understanding what type of PCOS you have. And then from what type of PCOS you have, there's going to be different things that we need to consider after looking at your blood work and then considering, okay, well, what's the next move from here in terms of should you supplement with something such as metformin, insulin, if you've got insulin resistance PCOS, but you might have a different type of PCOS. It could be inflammatory PCOS, to which we would take a different route. My point is, go to the expert that knows what you need if you are in the camp that requires something different to kickstart your journey. However, please appreciate, as I said, to those of you who are listening that do not have the special exclusion, you can just make sure to stick to a process which is ultimately going to be easy to sustain for your whole life. And that's exactly as it should be. We want to just do things as naturally as possible, because as naturally as possible means that we're avoiding risk. We do not want risk when it comes to improving health, right? That is the complete opposite of what we want. So if you're regularly taking things that are unnatural, synthetic, and putting them into your body in pursuit of becoming healthier, you've really got to take a good look at yourself in the mirror and think, what am I doing, right? So skip quick fixes. This is going to take time. It's about who you become through the process. It's about learning to appreciate every single step of the process. Do not wish away the time, because it's about who you become and the lessons that you learn throughout this process. With the habits that you have at this point, you need to make sure that they are completely reverse engineered from that end goal. So again, let me use another client case study here. I was recently speaking to a client that had expressed the desire to stop vaping. And I think this is something that really commonly in this day and age is an issue for a lot of people. Vapes came out as this kind of alternative to cigarettes, which obviously have so much risk associated with regard to health. But then with vapes, it's new, it's unknown, and ultimately inhaling nicotine or whatever it might be through a battery and a sponge in a little pen form. Does it sound healthy? No, it doesn't sound healthy. So we probably shouldn't be doing that as well. And I'm sure that in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have a whole lot of evidence for how vaping has really, really caused a health crisis. So point being here, this client expressed the desire to stop vaping and to cut that out completely. But when I said, well, what have you tried to do so far? It was kind of just wishful hoping that by maybe on every occasion not buying the vape or keeping it out of sight, that things would change. And it's not enough, ultimately. You have to get really specific. And that might be, by X date, I will guarantee that I have stopped doing this. Or by X date, I guarantee that I will have achieved this. So that's specific and it's time bound. And that is particularly important because when we're thinking about our goals, we need to make sure that they're specific, time bound, but they also need to be measurable. If you've heard of SMART goals before, we need to be specific about what's going to happen. We need to say when it's going to happen. We need to measure how it's going to happen. It needs to be something that's realistic. And whether A is actionable or accountable, we just need to make sure that we are ultimately tracking whether we're moving forward toward that goal. And so if we are going to set a goal, we need to then create that into a daily habit. So don't just expect that you're able to hope that you get somewhere. You need to boil it down into the daily habits. So that daily habit for this client who wishes to quit vaping might be every single day, I am going to go and make a tally on my no vape whiteboard or in my habit tracker. And every single day, I'm going to write down all of the things I think about myself when I am vaping, because from what she told me, she was pretty disgusted at herself for vaping and she was pretty scared about what it could mean for her health and the future of her children. So we need to make sure that every single day we are doing something systemized that can compound over time to get us to where we want to be. And then in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time, we're regularly assessing and measuring how far we have come. And this is something that is very easy to do if it's a goal that you wish to achieve or if it's something that you wish to stop doing. So make sure that you are systemizing and daily creating a habit that is going to allow you to move closer to where you want to be. Now, the reason why this is so helpful is because you are creating a process. You're falling back on a process and it's not there just in your mind. Because if it's in your mind, I really need to lose 20 kilos. I really need to lose 20 kilos. And each day you're thinking that, but then there's a day that you haven't tracked your calories or you haven't stuck to your meal plan or you didn't get to the gym, whatever it might be. You're going to mentally burn out and get to the point where you're just like, ugh, I haven't got there. Like I'm not progressing. And it's heartbreaking because you feel so upset and exasperated at yourself for not moving forwards. However, what happens if you've just got these 3 daily check boxes of 6 to 1800 calories, do 10,000 steps, make sure that I've meal prepped my lunch for tomorrow? If you've got those 3 daily habits, what does that mean? That means that each day you can look at, did I do these 3 things? Tick, tick, tick. Or let's say if for the last 3 days you haven't done something, you haven't meal prepped your lunch for the next day. Okay, well, why have I not done that? Well, I haven't done that because the evenings have been crazy. I've been working late. I get home, I'm exhausted. I just want to shower and get in bed. Okay, well, there's what's broken. So now instead of meal prepping every evening, maybe we batch cook on a Sunday and we meal prep for the next 3 days and we put the meals in the freezer. So then you've patched the problem. You're not then feeling really critical about yourself, but rather you're putting yourself in the position where you've just been able to systemize where you're aiming to go and you don't get burnt out because you're failing. You just put your logical hat on instead of your emotional hat and you look at your systems and you look at what's broken because there will be some type of bottleneck. If you imagine your fitness journey as a little bit of like a funnel with water pouring down it, there might be certain points at which that water starts pouring out of the funnel, right? And that is a hole that you're going to need to patch so that your focus, your energy, your time can be directly exiting the bottom of that funnel, which is leading you towards your goal. Because if you're having to patch holes in your funnel, you are starting to waste energy, starting to waste resources, willpower, and actually it's much easier when you've got a system to be able to look and assess where anything is going wrong. So make sure that you're not just trying to like chaotically get closer to where you want to be, but that you're keeping your logical reasoning brain in play and that you are using a systematic approach of daily habits. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. There is something that's particularly important for you high achievers and perfectionists listening. I see you. Yes, I'm speaking to myself here. We feel like more is better. Why do we feel like more is always better? This is so silly. This is so silly because it's quite simply not the case. Using it like quite simply using a calorie deficit as an example, a bigger calorie deficit is not better for fat loss because if your calorie deficit is way too big, well, you're going to struggle to get in enough protein. You're therefore going to be at risk of losing muscle tissue. You're also not going to be getting in enough healthy fats. Therefore, you're at risk of damaging yourself hormonally, especially as a female. You could put yourself at risk of hypothalamic amenorrhea. What does that mean? That means losing your period, your menstrual cycle, because your body does not have enough energy to have a reproductive system that is actually working. And long term, that's really going to impact your fertility, your bone mineral density, your hormonal health, your metabolism. It ruins everything. So crashing your calories really low and trying to stick to that for a prolonged amount of time is literally like lighting yourself on fire and pouring petrol on yourself. It is the complete opposite of what's going to be actually moving you forwards towards your goal. So we need to consider that we need to work smart. And smart is always what you should be thinking. Am I working smart? Example, if you are a busy, career-driven woman and you know that your inability to lose the body fat that you want to lose is stopping you from living a confident, successful life, then hear me out. We have just launched our Fat Loss Accelerator program, which is made specifically for women who are constrained for time, yet they want to lose anywhere between 10 to 25 pounds of body weight within 90 days. Throughout this process, we're also going to teach you exactly what you need to know so that you can maintain this result forever. That it's the lifestyle changes and the habits that you need to implement for the rest of your life to finally become that confident and successful woman who excels in all areas of her life. So if you're interested in finding out more about our Fat Loss Accelerator program, then send me a message on Instagram. Send me the words Fat Loss Accelerator. My Instagram is millie@teamcbm. The link is in description below, and I will get back to you with all the information that you need to know. Back to the episode. Comes to the end of the day, you've had a horrendously busy day in the office. You've been sat down all day. You woke up late, so you didn't even have time to go for a morning walk. You didn't even have time to prep your meals. Maybe you just had to buy whatever was at the office. And it gets to the end of the day, you go home and you are just so exhausted. You're terribly exhausted, but you know you've barely got any steps and you need to hit 10,000 steps a day for your fat loss goal. What is the smart thing to do here? When you get home at 9 p.m. and you're exhausted and you need to be back up awake at 6 a.m. the next day and you haven't got any food prepped for the next day, is it smart to go out and to go and do 10,000 steps, which is the equivalent of 90 minutes of walking, maybe even 2 hours, depending on the pace at which you walk? So you're eating into your sleep time when you're already exhausted, and you're probably eating into time where you need to meal prep. Is it smart to do that? Or is it smart to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get home, quickly prep some overnight oats so that I've got at least breakfast, and I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to message my coach and say, hey, I haven't had the chance to meal prep my food. If I were to buy something tomorrow from the canteen or from the restaurant, how many calories should I aim for my lunch? Well, I would say that's pretty damn smart compared to punishing yourself, going out hunting for those steps, eating into your recovery time, and then also not actually being proactive to figure out what do you do the next day if you haven't been able to prepare food in line with your calorie deficit. Same thing with if you're sick. If you're sick, and like, we can literally use me as an example, guys. I'm going to be the example right now because I'm on day 4 of recovering from a cold, and I am doing a half marathon prep. To those of you who know me, I'm very, very hardworking, high achiever, ambitious, a little bit competitive. So my damn ego has been shouting at me these last 4 days. That little voice has been saying, you've not gone to the gym. You need to do a run today. Oh, okay, now you've got 2 runs that you need to do at the weekend. You're going to miss this, and then you're not going to be able to get the time that you want in your half marathon. And then there's my self-compassionate side, which is saying, you're sick, you need to rest and just chill and wait until you feel better. What my ego is doing is it's wanting me to work hard and it's wanting me to not quit. What my compassionate side is doing is it's being smart. It's saying, if you were to train, remember that exercising when you're sick spikes your cortisol level, your stress hormone. When your stress hormone or cortisol is spiked, what does that do? Well, it dampens down your immune system. It dampens down your body's ability to recover. So by you exercising and doing physical activity when you're sick, you're going to actually mean that you prolong your time to recover, and you could even get more sick. So just rest, hun, and get back to it when you can do. Okay. So who am I going to be? Am I going to be the hard-headed, egotistical person that doesn't miss a beat just because I want to say that I didn't miss a single run in my race prep? Or am I going to listen to my compassionate side, which is being rather smart and saying, hey, babe, you should probably rest, wait until you feel better, and then ease back into your training, because we don't want to end up with an injury. We don't want to end up falling sick again. And also, here's a question for you. Are you willing to live in the consequences of your actions? The consequences of my actions of pushing through and doing a total of 30 kilometers of running, which I had programmed this week, if I were sick, would be very likely that I would be sick next week and I probably wouldn't recover. And then what does that do? That takes away another week of half marathon training, but it also means that because of my egotistical mind, I have not been able to show up for the people that rely on me? If I were really sick, could I look after all of our clients? Could I look after the members at Team CBM who support our incredible clients? Could I be here in a podcast studio recording content for you? The answer is no. So you can see the difference in not being hard-headed and egotistical and just working smart and not working hard. Appreciate that you always, always, always want to do what is going to allow you to keep on track for the majority of time. So if resting for 5 days means that you're more likely to stay on track for the next 90 days, that is a smart thing to do. Whereas actually, if in that acute period of time, for that 5 days where you were sick, you pushed on with your training, but then you ended up being sick for longer and therefore weren't able to train consistently for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and you weren't even able to work, well, within that 90-day period, you've done more damage by listening to your ego and trying to work harder. Being smart, being logical is the theme here. The logical hat, the logical brain, and not listening to that tiny little voice that we know is really there to rile us up is incredibly important so that you don't burn out, and that you look after yourself mentally and physically. Protecting your recovery is something that also comes with appreciating the minimum effective dose is the smartest thing to do. Because where we've spoken about sometimes less being more, this comes as a real positive when it comes to like increasing intensity over time. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to lose a total of 20 kilos, that reference again. If at the start of that journey, you did way more than was required to be able to lose body fat because you wanted to lose body fat at a really fast rate, what tools do you have later on where we need to actually up the ante to get off the remaining body fat? Those of you who are listening might know, as you lose body fat, it gets harder to lose body fat. So the leaner that you become, the more effort you need to put in to lose more body fat. It's easy at the start, it's hard at the end, right? Because at the beginning, you probably also will find that body fat drops off you much faster for less effort. But where if you are a smaller person, you're a lighter person, you have to do a lot more output in order to generate a calorie deficit like that. So the point is that the minimum effective dose leaves room for progress as well, and leaves some really powerful tools in your arsenal to be able to allow you to progress moving forwards. Just like if you show up to a new job on your first day, if you tell everyone everything that you're capable of doing, you overhaul everything, you are going to find that actually your opportunity to upskill over time is wasted or depleted. Because if, let's say, you have an apprentice role, yet you come in and you're like, I'm imminently going to do all the work of a supervisor, but then they start loading you even more and more and more work, you're overworking, you're underpaid, you're overtired, and you haven't actually allowed yourself to use those tools in your arsenal when they've been needed to enhance your progression. Now, this isn't me saying like play small, but it's me saying make sure to gauge your input according to where you are. So if you have really just started on your fat loss journey, don't expect to be doing 15,000 steps a day like I am. Don't expect to be trying to run 30 kilometers a week like I am. Don't expect to find it easy to stick to 1,400 calories per day like I can, because you haven't really learned that, and you also don't need to do that yet. It's not actually better. You should do the minimum effective dose to be able to lose a kilo per week, which might just be sticking to 1,700 calories, 10,000 steps a day, and 2 to 3 resistant training sessions per week. And that's pretty damn good going, right? So let's make sure that we're not thinking again that doing more is better, and that actually we're using the working smarter method to assess what is our minimum effective dose and then at least stay there and range between there and maybe the medium effective dose, but do not go double, triple dose in anything like maybe some of you party animals have done in the past. And then all of a sudden you realize, uh-oh, we have found ourselves in a little bit of a pickle, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm sure some of you know what I'm saying. There is going to be some non-negotiables and some nice to haves in your journey. Now, the nice to haves are, well, they are what they say on the tin. You might find that you wish to do certain things that will enhance your fitness journey. Like you might wish to incorporate stretching into your weekly routine or some mobility, or maybe you do want to go to a yoga or Pilates session. Okay, great. But is that moving the needle forwards the most for what your goal is? The answer is probably no, because the core of what we need to do is make sure that we're in a calorie deficit if your goal is fat loss. So actually, what is the most important thing for you to do on that Monday evening? Is it to go to the Pilates class, or is it to commit the time to meal prepping for the rest of the week where you know you're so busy you're not going to have any time to meal prep? What is the non-negotiable versus the nice to have? Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. Trust me, it sucks. There's been so many times where I'm there itching to go to a yoga class, and I know that I've got a deadline because I promised someone something, or because there's a certain marketing launch that we might be doing, or a piece of content that I need to get finalized. And because my day's gone to shit, I have to commit that time to doing that thing, and I can't make it to yoga class because life's thrown its cards at me that way. But by going to the yoga class or the Pilates class when I maybe should have been doing something else, or maybe when you should have been meal prepping for the rest of the week, you are doing tactical avoidance. What do I mean by tactical avoidance? I mean, you are avoiding the damn thing that's going to get you to where you want to be. You're avoiding that non-negotiable because you want to go airy-fairy, fart around and do something fun. Now, honey, life can't always be fun when we're trying to get to where we want to be. Sometimes we've got to put our big gold pants on and appreciate that we have to do the hard thing. I was listening to, whose story was it yesterday? Ollie Marchon. You guys might know him. He is a founder of Marchon Supplements, Marchon Gyms in the UK, and he is a hybrid athlete. And he had said on his Instagram story, he was like, I'm feeling a bit itchy today because I didn't manage to get my workout in. I didn't manage to train because business priorities had to come first. And sometimes that's the way the dust falls. He's like, that's the way it goes. But I'm feeling a bit itchy. I'm feeling a bit irritable, but I stuck to my non-negotiables. And yes, in an ideal world, we would want the non-negotiables to be our nice to haves, but it depends on what's your priority. And for myself and for Ollie, his priority is his business and my priority is my business. Obviously, within the grand scheme of things, it's pretty much health, fitness that is up there as well. But sometimes that has to waver, or sometimes it has to be swapped around in priority order. Now, what I'm trying to convey here is that you can very easily talk yourself into having the nice to have, because you can say, oh, it's been a very stressful day. It's been a very stressful day. I've just had so much to do. And I know that I would benefit from my breathwork class. Okay, maybe you will benefit from your breathwork class, and maybe that will be the most important thing that you do. But when you get to the end of the week, what are you going to feel the most satisfaction of? Is it going to be having lost 2 pounds that week because you spent that Monday evening meal prepping and you did not miss when it came to sticking to your calories and getting all your workouts done? Or did you feel most proud that you went to the breathwork class after a stressful day on Monday, but you've actually ended up gaining weight because you spent the whole week buying food at restaurants and convenience stores, and therefore you've actually regressed when it comes to your fat loss goals? You have got to literally play out the consequences of that action in your mind and see what is the most important thing to do. And I can guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, when you have to choose the non-negotiable compared to the nice to have, it will kill you and it won't feel fun, right? But it is most typically the right thing to do. So the way that you can make this really simple for yourself is almost like each week writing out what would you be really proud to achieve, and therefore always making sure that your decisions are in alignment with that. This is something I do on a monthly basis and on a daily basis, to be honest. Each month, I write out what would I be proud to achieve by the end of this month. And then each day, like I say, if today were to go well, and I do this in the morning, if today were to go well, what would I be proud to have achieved? And then I always reflect the next morning at what I wrote yesterday, and I assess why I did or I didn't achieve that. So it's really essential that you don't come in fooling yourself with self-compassion that you forget to stick to your damn discipline, right? Now we're talking about how to make sure that you don't get burnt out by the end of the year when it comes to your fitness goals. So yes, there will be certain moments where you need to rest and where you need to give an exception, but it depends on how significant it is with the impact of your goal. So this example that I've used, where if you don't meal prep on that Monday, the rest of your week is ruined when it comes to your nutrition, and you're really going to end up spending more money on buying food out, and you're also probably going to find that you haven't slept your calories. That's a real big impact. And therefore, it's probably the case that on that day, you should keep that promise to yourself of doing what you know that you need to do. But why don't you say, because today's been such a tough day, tomorrow I'm going to assess how I feel. And if I need to rejig my training sessions, and instead of training tomorrow evening, I need to just have a bath and read my book and chill out and maybe book a session with my therapist or my best friend, then do that, right? But do it from a perspective of having your logical brain reason with your self-compassionate brain. And this is not easy to do just cycling through the thoughts. I always used to sit there having arguments in my mind about what was the right thing to do in that instance. And one day I just wrote down, what would happen if I did this? And then I wrote down everything that would happen. And then I wrote down, what would happen if I did this? Wrote down the second scenario. And then seeing it black on white in a piece of paper, I can very simply understand which outcome do I want the most. Do I want this outcome or do I want that outcome? Well, I want the second outcome. Well, then I've got to do that damn thing, right? Instead of just being umming and ahhing and getting like decision paralysis by overanalyzing every thought that is going through your mind. Put it on paper, map out the scenario, ask, are you willing to live in the consequences of the actions of scenario A or B? And then you know which action to take in that moment. With the high achievers listening to this, you have a part inside you, which is the perfectionist. Ah, I love my perfectionist. She likes to help me in so many ways, but she also likes to make my life more difficult, right? Because the perfectionism approach often boils down to thinking that unless something is done a certain and particular way, like the system, the format, the whole ritual that we have around doing something, unless it's done like that, it's not good enough. It's actually so silly, because 9 times out of 10, the outcome, regardless of the process that we've used, is still the same outcome. Everyone knows that saying. There's 100 different ways to skin a cat, 1,000, 1,000,000. I don't know how many ways you could skin a cat, but let me tell you, if the cat ends up skinned, the cat is skinned. It doesn't matter who took the longest to do it, who did it in the most traditional and authentic way. It doesn't matter who had the most fun whilst doing it. The cat needs to get skinned. And sometimes, like, this is actually making me so uncomfortable saying the cat needs to get skinned, considering that I have 3 beautiful ginger rescue kitties at home. I don't want to talk about skinning my cats. Oh, my poor boys. I hope they don't hear this. It's going to terrify them. Anyway, if that is the scenario that we need to end up with a skinned cat, you need to assess, okay, well, what modality are we going to use? Is it the fact that we need to do it the fastest? Is it the fact that we need to do it the cleanest? What matters the most? And a lot of the time, none of that matters. And it just matters that it gets done. Sometimes it might be the case that you really want to enjoy the process. And I would advise this if we're talking about like training, exercise within the gym. If you're thinking about the most effective way to train, what we want to do when it comes to achieving your overall fitness goals, we want to do it in a way that you're able to sustain for the longest. And that tends to boil down from enjoyment. Now, is it smart to change your workouts every week? because you find it fun. No, that's actually not smart, because we need to allow some room for progression. But is it important that we change it often enough in order for you to still stay engaged, if that's how your mindset works? Then yes, that is something that is important. So when it comes to aiming for something to be in alignment with the way that you desire it to be, make sure that it does not inflict damage on the process of actually getting that thing done consistently over time. Finally, when curveballs get thrown at you, which they inevitably will do, learn to pivot, not to quit, because quitting should never be an option. You should never quit. You say that you want this, do it, no matter what gets thrown at you. And if that means taking time away, aka use me as an example, this week having to take time away from my half marathon prep, I'm not going to quit, right? I'm not going to quit just because 1 week I haven't been able to do what I've needed to do. I'm going to put my big girl pants on and carry on and do the best that I can. And sometimes some of you might go through stages where you can't prioritize yourself or your goals as much as you want to because of responsibilities when it comes to a family or even health. Like there was times a couple of years ago when my dad's health was so poor, I had to go and look after him, live in another country, nurse him, that I literally didn't step foot in a gym for a month because my priority was my dad and running my business, right? I didn't quit on my fitness journey. I didn't quit on my fat loss journey. I controlled what I could control. So I'll keep this simple and just instill it into your mind that quitting is not an option. You can never, ever quit. And throughout this process, learn to love it. Circling back full circle to what I said at the start, it's about who you become throughout this process. It's about the incredible, incredible person that is going to develop within you a year into the future. And you'll look different and you'll feel different. You'll be different. But you'll be thanking you now for enjoying the process. Not berating yourself, not hating yourself, keeping logical, but also showing yourself self-compassion at the times when you need it. If you have enjoyed this episode, please, please, please leave a rating on Spotify. I'd really appreciate it. Make sure as well, if you're listening on YouTube, that you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys in the next one. We've got some special guests coming up this year, which I can't wait to share with you. Have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys.